I'm gonna get y'all a great deal on this house.
Directed by Melissa LaMartina, we are talking For Sale by EXORCIST. And this is a comedy horror movie. And I guess you would say it counts as found footage. It's kind of like the TV show The Office, where it is a kind of faux documentary following a particular character, Susan, who is a realtor or an estate agent, as it's known here in the UK. And she specialises in selling properties that are haunted or possessed, and she effectively vanquishes whatever spirit or demon is there in there so she can sell it. And that's her MO, that's her speciality. So it follows a kind of a documentary film crew that are following her around doing her job, and we see kind of various misadventures with her dealing with potential clients, trying to find a home for herself, and a kind of variety of spooky interactions. What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So yes, I guess this technically classes as a found footage movie, as it is meant to be a kind of mockumentary. And again, if you've seen TV shows like The Office, either one, you'll kind of get the idea of where this kind of movie is kind of going. It's kind of in an irreverent, quirky sort of, not really, I mean, I guess it's to do with horror subject, but it's never really a horror movie, but it's certainly in that world, I guess you would say, but it's primarily a kind of a comedy. What do I think works in our movie's favour? I think our main actress who plays Susan is actually kind of quite charming, I have to say. And a lot is asked of her. And she is in practically every frame of this movie. And I think she has a kind of natural charisma that I do think sort of comes across on screen. And she's kind of playing this kind of Southern Belle type sort of character who's naturally affable, and is always kind of like quite positive and things like this. And as such, I think she is the main draw of this movie, because her sort of strength of personality and her character, and the way this actress kind of carries this character to make her this kind of G-shucks kind of style of kind of personality, and it is quite a fun sort of premise. This kind of this realtor, this estate agent who specialises in kind of haunted houses, and is able to kind of be quite sort of matter of fact with it all, and kind of quite mundane, and just sees it as more of an annoyance than anything else, not really ever kind of getting too scared or worried about it, and it's just kind of her day job. It's a kind of a sort of a fun premise that does lend itself to some sort of comedy elements to it, and if you like, series like The Office or What You Do in the Shadows and things like that, then again, you may well get a kick from this kind of sort of humour. I don't think it's ever as funny as those properties, I have to say, but it has a sort of an ongoing sort of just this sense of humour through the movie, where it's just this sort of irreverent sort of matter-of-fact style, which I think makes it maybe not laugh out loud funny, but sort of certainly has an amusing charm to it. And I think that's the thing with this movie, the film itself, the actress, and the kind of the low budget nature of this movie makes it have a kind of a charm to it. And it has there's a degree of an originality here, let's be honest. I mean, like I said, this I guess counts as a found footage movie, although arguably you can say it's not really that fussed about being too true to the mechanics of that, but there it is. But it makes for a very, very diverting movie, if not a particularly enthralling one, that I think plays a little bit like a skit show, and had this movie, I think, been watched in chunks, I think this movie would be quite digestible like that, as more of like a webisode, or part of an anthology, or such sorts of thing. Because this just leads me to what I think doesn't work in this film. Like I've said, it's never as funny as like its contemporaries, like The Office or What You Do in the Shadows. It's never as funny as those shows or movies, and as such, it's only at best sort of a mildly entertaining movie. Now, humour is subjective, so what I find funny, you might not, and vice versa. But I think when you compare it to, those type of properties that have a similar sort of setup, this kind of found footage documentary style, it just doesn't compare really. The movie never really has those kind of those moments where either it never really goes that absurd, or has those kind of uncomfortable moments like The Office has, where you have more of a sense of reality, maybe like The Office, where this one, it doesn't have that. It's always just a little bit on the spoofy side, but then never really goes full throttle with it. Instead, it kind of has this kind of middle ground, I would say, where it's the characters aren't quite as believable or as relatable as characters in either of the Office shows, and therefore you don't really kind of have as much reverence for it, and it never goes to the absurdity of What We Do in the Shadows. And as such, it kind of has this kind of middle ground, which is at best, like I say, a little bit diverting without ever being particularly funny. And I think just too much is asked of the one actress, really. I think she does a good enough job, but again, the character is a little bit too far-fetched, maybe, to root for in a kind of any meaningful way. And there's such the kind of the movie has this kind of more spoof feel to it, and because the movie has this kind of consistent joke all the way through it, it never really feels like it offers much more than that. The movie is also incredibly low budget. If you're wanting more of a visual depiction of ghosts, demons and things like that, it's not really here. It's just kind of like, and this movie is not trying to be scary or particularly VFX laden in any particular way, but it's just kind of someone throwing furniture around and moving things off camera with a fishing wire and the rest of it, and that's basically it. So it's kind of like a one joke film, and like I said, I think the joke is mildly diverting for a time, but I had to watch this movie in 3 sittings because I just found this movie to be a little tiresome all at one, because as I say, it's kind of one joke through the whole movie. And I gotta say, if you think, oh, maybe it's got an interesting story, it doesn't. It doesn't really have a story. It is just a series of sort of misadventures and interactions with different characters without really ever having an actual narrative. And as such, again, it's so lightweight. I'll give it props for originality to a point, and I think a lot of the work, the good work here, is done by our central actress, who I think does a lot of the heavy lifting and deserves a lot of the praise for fans of this movie. But I've got to say, overall, I thought this movie was actually a little disappointing. I was actually expecting more from this, and I was kind of hoping I would like this more. It's a 4 out of 10 for me. It's certainly going to appeal to some people, but for the most, I think it's more of a missed opportunity. 4 out of 10. What were your thoughts? Leave me comments, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.